The red sky of planet Kira burned above like a giant flame. Heat waves danced across the ground and sharp winds carried sand into the air. A slave transport ship flew low, shaking from the dry storm building behind it. The ship was old and loud, painted with the symbol of the Okran Empire, known across the galaxy for its cruelty. Inside the ship, slaves sat in silence. Metal cuffs locked their hands, and thin metal collars wrapped their necks. There were more than 30 captives, young, old, male, female, all stolen from different planets. Among them sat a quiet alien woman named Nira. Her skin had a soft teal color, and her large silver eyes stared at the floor. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply waited, as she had learned to do. Nira had been taken from her village many moons ago. The slavers burned her home and took everyone. Since then, she had been moved from one cage to another, sold, traded, forgotten. She had never seen kindness, only chains. This ship was headed to the black market fields, where slaves were sold to the highest bidder. It was said that no one returned from that place. Suddenly, the sky outside changed. Dark clouds moved fast across the desert, and lightning cracked in the distance. A strong wind hit the ship's side, shaking it violently. The slavers cursed and tried to control the ship. A few slaves screamed as the ship tilted. Nira held on to the metal bar beside her. She had no words for fear anymore. Fear was part of her now. But then, something unexpected happened. The back door of the transport, half broken already, was hit by the storm's force. It snapped open with a loud bang. A rush of wind tore through the ship. Boxes and tools flew out. Nira, sitting close to the door, was hit by flying debris. Her grip loosened. A second later, the wind pulled her out of the ship. She fell fast, her body twisting through the air. The ship disappeared above her. No one shouted. No one tried to catch her. The other slaves saw her fall, but they said nothing. They had no power. The slavers didn't care. One less mouth to feed. Nira hit the rocks hard. Her body rolled down the side of a deep canyon. She hit her head, and everything turned black. Silence. She didn't know how long she had been lying there. Her body ached. Dust clung to her skin. Her ankle felt twisted. One side of her head throbbed. She tried to move but could barely lift her hand. Her eyes slowly opened. She was still alive. Above her, the sky was now clear. Stars blinked in the dark. The transport ship was gone. She was truly alone. For the first time in years, she was not in chains. But she was still a prisoner, this time to the desert. Nira tried to sit up but collapsed again. Her breath was shallow. The rocks around her were sharp, but she had landed in a patch of sand between them. That had saved her life. She looked at the sky again. So wide, so endless. For a moment, she forgot the pain. She was free. But freedom in the desert meant something else. It meant thirst, hunger, death. She closed her eyes, thinking this was the end. But far away, someone else had seen the storm. A human named Tomar stood on a hill near his shelter. He lived alone, far from the cities and even farther from the empire. He had built a life in the desert, growing food in underground waterbeds and fixing old machines. A long time ago, he had fought in the human frontier army. Now he only fought against time, heat, and silence. As the storm passed, Tomar looked through his old binoculars. Something had fallen into the canyon. Not a rock, not a machine. It was a person. He grabbed his pack, picked up his light, and hurried into the canyon. His boots crushed dry plants as he moved fast down the rocks. After 20 minutes, he reached the place where the figure had landed. He stopped. It was a woman, not human. Her skin was teal and her hair was silver white, tangled with dust and blood. Her thin arms lay across her chest, unmoving. Her face was peaceful but pale. She wore torn slave clothes and a broken collar around her neck. Tomar slowly knelt beside her. Still breathing, he said to himself. He poured a little water on her lips. She moved slightly, her eyes blinking open. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. She only looked at him, eyes full of fear, confusion, and something else. Something like hope. "I'm not here to hurt you," Tomar said softly. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was calm. He lifted her gently, careful not to hurt her more. She was light, too light. He carried her back through the canyon, one step at a time. The stars above watched silently. At the edge of his small home, Tomar opened the old metal door and stepped inside. It was warm, safe, clean. He laid her on a soft mat and covered her with a blanket. She watched him with half-closed eyes. He handed her a small drink. "Rest," he said. She didn't answer, but she drank. Then, for the first time in many years, Nara closed her eyes in a place that didn't smell like fear. She was alive, she was free, and she had been found. Nara opened her eyes slowly. The room was dim but warm. Soft lights from an old lamp filled the corners. The air smelled of dry earth, metal, and something she couldn't name, something clean. Her body ached, and her head was still heavy. She tried to sit up, but pain in her ankle stopped her. Then she remembered. The fall, the desert, the ship flying away, the cold rocks, and then the man. She looked around with wide silver eyes. The place was small but neat. Strange tools and parts were stacked on shelves. A low table held metal cups and some dried food. There were no chains, no guards, no other voices, just silence. Then she heard footsteps. The door opened and Tomar stepped in. He carried a small bowl of warm broth and a folded blanket. His eyes met hers. He paused, seeing she was awake. "I brought food," he said slowly, showing her the bowl. She didn't move. He placed it beside her, then stepped back. His hands were open. His voice was calm. "It's safe here." She didn't understand his words, but his voice was not sharp like the slavers. It had no anger, no threat. Still, she watched him carefully. Her life had taught her not to trust too fast. Tomar sat a short distance away and waited. He didn't speak more. After some time, Nara reached out and touched the bowl. The smell made her stomach twist. She took a small sip, then another. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. Tomar gave a small nod. "Good." He stood up and left the room, leaving her alone again. In the next few days, Nara began to heal. Her ankle was wrapped with clean cloth. Her cuts had been treated. She was still weak, but stronger than before. She stayed quiet most of the time, watching Tomar from a distance. He moved carefully around her, always speaking softly and showing what he was doing. He worked outside during the day, fixing old solar panels and checking the water lines. At night, he sat near the fire, reading from a small screen. Nara started to notice things. He was not a rich man. His clothes were old. His machines were patched together, but his place was safe and clean and quiet. Sometimes she helped. At first, just small things, handing him tools, folding cloth, washing simple dishes. Tomar never ordered her. He never raised his voice. He always said something after she helped. She did not know the words, but she could feel the meaning. "Thank you." One morning, Tomar set a small wooden board on the floor and drew shapes with a stick. A star, a sun, a tree. Then he pointed at each and said the words slowly. Star, sun, tree. Nara watched, quietly. He handed her the stick. She paused, then copied the drawing of the sun. She looked at him. He smiled. "Son." She said nothing, but her eyes lit up. So they began to learn. Each day, Tomar taught her new words. Simple ones: food, sky, hand, water. Nara was smart. She learned fast. Her voice was soft, but clear. "Water," she said one evening, holding the metal cup. Tomar nodded. "Yes, water." It became a small joy for both of them. Through words and signs, Nara began to share pieces of her past. She drew a picture of a small house under 2 moons, a tall tree, 3 figures beside her, family, then a big ship, fire, chains. Tomar understood. He had seen enough war to know pain when he saw it. He didn't ask questions. He just listened. When Nara pointed to the broken collar she had removed and placed on the table, Tomar picked it up and threw it deep into the canyon behind his home. She watched it fall, then looked at him. For the first time, she smiled. But not all was peaceful one night. Nara woke up in fear. Outside, she heard a strange hum in the air, a low flying ship. Her heart raced. She peeked through the window. The slaver's mark was on the ship's side. They were searching. She rushed to Tomar's room and knocked on the door. He opened it, alert. Nara pointed to the sky. "Ship, bad." He looked out. His face became serious. They came for her, he thought. Without wasting time, Tomar guided her down into a deep tunnel under his shelter. It was once a mine shaft. He had kept it hidden just in case. "Stay here," he said. "Don't come out until I call you." Nara held his arm. Her eyes begged him not to go, but he shook his head. "I'll be careful." He closed the tunnel and went back up. Outside, the slaver ship landed near his home. 3 armed aliens stepped out. One of them knocked on his door. Tomar opened it slowly, pretending to yawn. "You live alone?" the leader asked in a harsh voice. Tomar nodded. "Only me. No visitors." The slaver stepped inside without asking. He looked around. Saw nothing unusual. "We tracked a fall in this area. A slave fell off a ship." Tomar raised an eyebrow. "A slave? You think someone survived that fall?" The slaver grunted. "Not likely. But we check." They searched for a while but found no sign. Tomar acted calm, offered them water, spoke little. After 20 minutes, they left. Tomar watched their ship disappear into the night sky. Only then did he return to the tunnel and open it. Nara looked up at him. "Gone?" He nodded. "Gone." She sighed, her whole body relaxing. That night, she sat near the fire, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Tomar sat across from her. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of trust and something else, hope. Morning light poured into the small shelter. A soft wind blew outside, carrying dust and the quiet hum of the desert. Nara stood at the doorway, looking at the wide sky. Her silver eyes were calm now, not filled with fear like before. Her wounds were healing. Her ankle, still wrapped in cloth, didn't hurt as much. Tomar was nearby, fixing a solar plate. He looked up and saw her watching the clouds. "You can come out," he said with a small smile. "It's safe today." She looked at him, understanding his tone more than his words, then stepped out slowly. The air was warm and dry. The ground was hard and cracked, but to Nara it felt like freedom. She had never walked outside without a collar or chains. She walked slowly, breathing deeply. Each breath was new, fresh, and free. Tomar showed her the land around the shelter. There was a water well hidden under a rock cover. A small garden of strong plants grew near the wall. A wind-powered cooler kept food safe inside the shelter. Everything was built with care. Nothing was wasted. Nara helped where she could. She carried small tools, cleaned parts, and even watered the plants. Her hands moved with care. She didn't speak much, but her eyes spoke for her. She was thankful. At night, they sat near the fire inside the shelter. Tomar read from his old data screen. Nara watched with curiosity. One night, he turned the screen toward her and said, "Words, letters." He showed her how to read simple signs. She pointed to one and tried to speak. "Sky." "Yes," he said, "sky." She smiled softly. She liked learning. She had never been taught before. Her old life had no room for knowledge, only commands. Tomar printed some basic words on old paper. Every evening they studied together. Nara's voice was gentle but clear. Water, food, fire, friend. Tomar nodded. Yes, friend. Days passed. Nara began to laugh. Just a little, but it was real. She found a small desert bird outside, one day. Its wing was hurt. She brought it to Tomar, and they cared for it together. When it finally flew away, she clapped softly and looked at Tomar with joy. "You help. I help." "Bird free," she said, her words slow but proud. Tomar looked at her with respect. "You're learning fast." Sometimes Nara drew pictures in the dirt. She showed him her village, a river, trees, the moons of her home planet. She also drew the slaver's ship, the fire, the fear. He listened carefully. He never rushed her. He knew these stories were hard to share. He shared a little too. "I was a soldier," he said one night. "Long ago. I left after the war. I saw too much." Nara didn't know every word, but she understood. She placed her hand on her chest and said, "You fight. Now you fix." Tomar nodded. "Yes, I fix." One evening, while working on a broken machine, Nara cut her finger. She winced and stepped back. Tomar gently took her hand and cleaned the cut. It was small, but her eyes filled with water. "Pain?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, not pain. Just someone care." He looked at her and gave her a soft cloth. "You deserve that." She looked away, shy but touched. Nara started to dream again. At night, she no longer woke with fear. She dreamed of gardens, of music, of laughter. In one dream, she was walking through her village, and there were no ships in the sky, just stars. She began to ask questions. Why sky red? Why this plant sharp? "Where you from?" Tomar answered every question with patience. He pointed at maps, showed her old photos, and explained with simple words. "Earth," he said, pointing to a blue planet. "My home," she pointed, to a green moon near it. "You miss?" He nodded. "Sometimes, but I have peace here." She tilted her head. "You alone long time?" "Yes," he said, "until I found you." One day, while collecting parts from the edge of the canyon, Nara stopped. She stared into the deep rocks where she had fallen. "This place," she said. "I die here." Tomar. "Look down." "No. You lived here." She looked at him. "Because you find me." He nodded. She said slowly, "Before, I only survive. Now, I live." Those words stayed with him all day. That evening, as they sat watching the stars, Nara asked quietly, "If bad ships come again, what we do?" Tomar looked at her seriously. "We hide, or we fight." She touched her wrist where her old cuff used to be. "I don't want to hide always." "You won't," he said. "Not forever." There was strength in her now. She had once been a slave, then a lost girl in the desert. Now she stood with her head held high, still quiet, still gentle, but no longer afraid of every shadow. Night. Nara looked at the sky and whispered words she had learned. Sky. Moon. Safe. Home. She smiled to herself. She was still far from her people, her planet, and her past. But here, in this dry and lonely land, she had found something she had never known before. A beginning. The sun was setting behind the canyon walls, painting the desert sky with colors of gold and orange. The wind was gentle, and the air felt peaceful. Nara stood outside Tamar's shelter, her feet steady on the dry ground. Her ankle had healed. Her steps were stronger now. She looked up at the stars starting to appear. Every evening she waited for this moment, the first stars of night. They reminded her of home. She didn't know if her planet still lived or if her people had survived. But here, under the same sky, she felt hope. Inside the shelter, Tomar was fixing a scanner. The old machine beeped faintly, its screen showing static. "Almost done," he said as Nara walked in. She came beside him and pointed. "What is this?" "Old signal reader," he said. "Helps track ships, just in case." She nodded, understanding. Enough. The desert was quiet, but they both knew it would not stay that way forever. Later that night, as they were eating, the scanner let out a soft, high-pitched tone. Tamar's eyes narrowed. He walked over and checked the screen. A red dot was blinking. "Ship," he said. "Low flight. Nearby." Nara's hands froze. "Slaver ship?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," he said. "Could just be patrol. But we prepare." Without panic, Tomar moved through the shelter. He locked doors, covered windows, and grabbed a small bag of tools. He handed Nara a small water bottle and a blanket. "Go to the cave." She nodded. They walked out into the darkness. The desert was still, but the air had changed. It felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. Tomar led her to the hidden entrance of the mine shaft. It was deep and cold inside. He lit a small lamp and placed it near the wall. "You stay here," he said. "Only come out when I return." Nara looked at him. "Danger?" "Maybe," he said, "but I'll be careful." She placed a hand on his arm. "Please, come back." He gave a small nod, then climbed out and closed the entrance. Tomar returned to the shelter and waited. A low hum soon filled the air. Dust rose as a black ship landed near the edge of the canyon. The slaver symbol marked its side. 3 figures stepped out, tall, armored, armed. One of them walked toward the shelter and knocked hard. Tomar opened the door slowly. "Who are you?" the slaver asked. "Just a settler," Tomar replied. "Been here 10 years. No one visits." "We tracked a signal. Someone fell from one of our ships last week." Tomar raised an eyebrow. "In this desert? If they fell, they're already dead." The slaver didn't laugh. "We check anyway." The 3 entered, searching the shelter. Tomar stayed calm, answering questions simply. He acted like he had nothing to hide. They found nothing. No sign of Nara, no extra clothes, no food missing. Tomar had hidden everything well. After some time, the leader gave a sharp signal, and the others returned to the ship. "If you see anything," the slaver said, "report it. Keeping a slave is a crime." "I'll remember that," Tomar said. The ship lifted off and vanished into the night sky. Only after they were truly gone did Tomar return to the cave. He opened the entrance and climbed down. Nara stood up fast, her eyes wide. "You're safe?" He nodded. "Yes." They left. She breathed deeply and stepped forward. She looked strong, but her hands were cold. "I was scared," she said softly. "I didn't want to go back." "You won't," he said. "Not while I live." Back in the shelter, Nara sat near the fire. The fear still sat in her chest like a stone. Tomar handed her warm tea. She held it tightly. "We cannot stay like this forever," she said after a long silence. "They come back," Tomar agreed. "They will search again." She looked at him. Then I go. I run far. No, he said. You're not alone anymore. She was quiet. Then she said, They want to take me, but they take others too. Many. Still. Tamar's eyes narrowed. Yes, slavery still grows. I was nothing to them, Nara whispered. Just a thing. You're not a thing, he said. You're a person. You're strong. She looked at him. You saved me. Others wait for someone too. Tamar didn't answer right away. His thoughts were heavy. He had once been a soldier. He had fought battles across moons and cities. He had seen people suffer. After the war, he wanted peace. But now, he saw a storm rising again. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. The next day, Tomar cleaned his old communicator. It had dust inside, but still worked. He tuned it carefully and sent out a quiet signal. Message from Outpost 17, he said. Civilian Tomar speaking. Slaver ship sighted in Desert Sector 3. Evidence of fallen slave found alive. Requesting contact from any resistance cell. Nara stood beside him, listening. You think someone will hear? She asked. Maybe, he said. There are still good people out there. She looked at the sky again. Then we wait. But we don't run, he nodded. No, we stand. That night, Nara looked at her reflection in the metal plate. Her skin was healing. Her eyes were not dull anymore. She touched her chest and whispered, Not a slave. Not anymore. Tamar came and sat beside her. We fight if we must, he said. She smiled. Then teach me. Teach you? To fight, to protect, like you. He looked at her, surprised. Then he gave a small nod. Tomorrow, he said, we begin. The desert sun was high in the sky, and the wind carried dust across the wide open land. Tamar stood behind the shelter, watching Nara aim a small training tool. She held it with both hands, her arms steady, her eyes sharp. He had built a simple training target using old metal parts. Each time she hit the center, it made a small ring sound. Good, Tomar said. Try again. Nara nodded and fired. Another hit. In the last few days, she had changed. Her steps were quicker. Her back stood straighter. She learned fast how to aim, how to move, how to think like someone who wouldn't be taken again. You have a fighter's mind, Tomar said one evening as they sat by the fire. I had to learn how to survive, she replied. Now I want to learn how to protect. Tomar gave a small smile. He saw in her what he had once seen in young soldiers, strength, fire, and purpose. Then one afternoon, a message arrived. The communicator blinked and let out a sharp beep. Tomar walked over and checked the screen. Signal detected, he said. It's from a resistance scout ship. They're coming here. Nara stood beside him. They come to help? Maybe. Or maybe they just want to see if I'm telling the truth. Within 2 hours, a small gray ship landed not far from the shelter. It had no Empire marks, only a simple blue stripe across the side. 3 humans stepped out. One of them, a woman with short hair and a long coat, introduced herself. I'm Nira. I lead a local resistance cell on the edge of the red zone. You said you had a survivor. Tamar nodded and stepped aside. Nara walked forward slowly, her chin lifted. She said in a clear voice, My name is Nara. Nira studied her carefully. You're not afraid. Not anymore. Nira smiled. Good. They spoke for hours. Nara told them what she remembered about the slave ship, the route, the guards, and the cages. Mira's team listened and took notes. Then Nira said something that changed everything. We tracked that same slaver ship. It's docked now at a desert outpost 5 hours west of here. Dozens of slaves are inside, some of them very young. Nara's hands tightened. We have to stop them. We want to, Nira said. But we're short on fighters. Tomar stood. We'll help. Mira raised an eyebrow. You're alone. Not anymore, Tomar said. He looked at Nara. We fight together. That night, they made a plan. The outpost was heavily guarded, but not impossible to reach. The slavers believed they were safe in the desert. They did not expect humans to strike there. Nara would join the team. She knew how the slavers thought, how they moved. Her experience could save lives. Tomar gave her a small blaster and a protective vest. You sure you're ready? He asked. She looked him in the eye. I'm not the same girl you found in the canyon. Before dawn, they left. The desert was cold in the early light. The small team moved quickly on quiet transports. By the time the sun rose fully, the outpost came into view. It was a low building surrounded by sharp fences and patrol towers. Mira pointed. Slaves are kept underground. We go in, cause confusion, and get them out. Nara breathed slowly. Her heart beat fast, but her hands were steady. When the signal came, everything moved fast. Mira's team hit the gate from the east. Alarms sounded. Guards shouted. Tomar and Nara moved through the shadows on the west side, finding the back door. Using a stolen key code, Tomar unlocked the door, and they rushed inside. Inside the halls, they found the prison cells. Nara ran ahead, calling softly in her language. Faces appeared from the darkness. Men, women, and children. We're here to help, she said gently. Tomar broke the locks. The slaves followed quickly, their eyes full of fear and confusion. Then a loud shout came from the end of the hall. Stop! 2 slavers appeared, armed and ready. They fired. Tomar pushed Nara down and fired back, hitting one. The second tried to run, but Nara stood and shot once. A clean hit. She had protected them. The rescued group moved fast, following the escape path. Outside, Mira's team was still fighting. Smoke filled the air. Nara led the slaves across the back path. Tomar covered the rear. Blaster fire hit the ground near them, but they kept going. When they reached the waiting transport, Nara helped the children climb aboard. Tomar guided the others. Mira's voice came through the communicator. Pulling back now! Everyone out! The ship lifted just as the enemy sent more patrols. The desert below grew smaller and smaller. Inside the ship, the rescued people sat, in silence. Nara looked around. One of the children hugged her leg. She gently touched the child's hair. Tomar came beside her. You did it, he said. No, she replied. We did it! When they landed back at the shelter, the resistance team cheered. The mission had worked. No lives lost. Every cage was now empty. Mira looked at Nara. We need people like you. Will you fight with us again? Nara nodded. As long as they take, I will fight. Tomar placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we fight together. That night, the stars seemed brighter. The air felt lighter. The desert, which once felt like the end, now felt like a beginning again. Nara stood, outside, looking up. She had once fallen from the sky, broken and alone. Now she stood tall, ready to rise again. The desert winds blew gently across the dry land as morning light spread over the canyon. In the quiet, a group of people stood near Tomar's shelter. Some were carrying tools. Others held simple weapons. Their clothes were worn, their faces tired, but their eyes were full of purpose. Nara stood among them, her back straight, her silver eyes calm. She looked at the faces of those who had once been slaves like her. Now, they were free, and they wanted to fight. Tomar stood beside her, watching carefully as new people arrived each day. Some came alone, some came in groups. All of them had heard about the rescue. All of them were ready to join the resistance. We'll run out of space soon, Tomar said. We'll make more, Nara replied. We have no choice. They had already built extra tents, dug water lines, and used old ship parts to make storage rooms. The place that had once been a quiet shelter was now a growing outpost. A spark had been lit, and it was spreading. Training began the next day. Tomar showed the new fighters how to hold a blaster, how to move quietly, and how to stay calm in danger. Nara helped lead the groups, especially the ones who didn't speak the human language. She used signs, simple words, and quiet strength. "I was once like you," she said to a group of young girls. "Afraid, lost, but I survived. And now I fight." The girls listened closely. They followed her every move. They believed in her. Each day, more people arrived. A few brought broken equipment or old maps. Others brought news of slaver patrols, secret prisons, and hidden trade routes. Slowly, the resistance grew smarter, faster, and stronger. Tomar fixed broken radios and built a signal tower with help from the new engineers. They sent coded messages across the desert to other human and alien groups. "Outpost 17 reporting," Nara said one evening. "We are growing. We are ready." The reply came after a short pause. "Help is coming." One night, the camp sat around a large fire. The stars were bright above them. For the first time in a long while, laughter filled the air. A man played soft music on a small instrument. Children danced in circles. The fighters ate warm food and shared stories. Nara sat beside Tomar, a light blanket over her shoulders. She looked around and whispered, "This feels like a village." Tomar nodded. "A free one." "But it's not over yet," she added. "No," he said, "but it's beginning." Then Nira arrived. The resistance leader had returned, her ship landing quietly under the night sky. She stepped into the circle and raised her voice. "We have new orders," she said. "The slavers are planning to strike this outpost. They think we're still weak." Everyone became silent. Nira continued. "They're wrong. We'll be ready." For the next 2 days, the outpost prepared for war. Guards watched the canyon. Scouts went into the hills to track enemy movement. Barriers were built. Weapons were shared. Nara walked among the people, checking supplies, giving courage with just a word or a smile. Tomar worked late into the night, setting up traps, alarms, and hidden defense lines. He trusted Nara now like he trusted his own hands. They spoke little but understood much. Then, just before dawn on the 3rd day, the alarm sounded. A ship was coming. The fighters rushed into position. Children and unarmed civilians were taken to the caves. Everyone else stood ready. The slaver ship landed far off, just beyond the canyon ridge. Dust rose behind it. Then came the sound of boots. More than 20 soldiers moved toward the outpost, armed and ready, but this time, Nara was not running. She stood at the front beside Nira and Tomar. She held her blaster firmly. "They think. We will hide," she said. "Let's show them they're wrong." The battle began with a flash. The resistance fighters used cover and surprise. Mira's team struck from the left, while Nara led her group around the right side. The traps Tomar had set worked perfectly. Blinding lights, collapsing sand pits, and sharp noise bursts. The slavers were confused. They shouted orders, but their lines broke quickly. Nara moved fast and smart. She guided her team through the rocks, gave signals, and helped wounded fighters. Her heart raced, but her mind stayed clear. Then she saw one of the slaver leaders trying to run. She followed quietly and caught up behind a rock. He turned and aimed at her. She didn't stop. She fired once, a clean hit. The battle ended within an hour. The slavers retreated. A few were captured. Most were gone. The outpost stood. Cheers broke out. People hugged. Some cried. Some dropped to their knees, thankful to be alive. Nara stood on the ridge, looking out at the fading enemy ship. Tomar joined her. "You led them well." She nodded slowly. "We fought like one." Nira came over too. "They listen to you. They follow you. You're more than a fighter now." Nara looked down at her hands. Once tied, now free. She had come from nothing, a number, a shadow. But now people looked at her with respect, with hope. That night, another fire was lit. Nira announced that other outposts were rising across the desert. More groups were joining the fight. The Empire's grip was weakening, one step at a time. "Because of what we've done here," she said. Others now believe. The crowd cheered. Nara looked around. She remembered the moment she had fallen from the sky, the cold rocks, the silence. Now she stood among flames of freedom, with friends beside her. She was not alone, not anymore. The desert sky was dark, but the outpost was full of quiet movement. Fighters walked in lines, checking weapons and tools. Scouts climbed rocks with night vision scopes. Nara stood in the center of it all, calm and ready. She wore light armor, now made from scraps and old plates. Her blaster was clean and charged. On her arm, she wore a simple red cloth, the symbol of the resistance. Tomar stood beside her, adjusting his gloves. He looked around at the fighters. Some were human. Others were different species, but all stood together. "They will come soon," he said. Nara nodded. "We'll be ready." The news had spread fast. The slavers had failed to take the outpost. Word traveled across hidden radios and quiet mouths. People in chains whispered it to each other. "The desert fighters are winning." In nearby villages and slave camps, hope was growing like a spark waiting to become flame. Many tried to escape. Some succeeded, some were caught, but they all tried, and that was new. The Empire was worried now. They had lost too much already. This time, they sent more than a patrol. They sent a full force, 3 ships, 60 soldiers, heavy weapons, drones, commanders, orders to crush everything. The outpost didn't run. They didn't hide. They prepared. Nira returned with extra supplies and fighters. A team of engineers set up signal jammers and auto turrets, hidden wires, connected to underground bombs. Medical tents were set up near the canyon wall, and deep in the rock tunnels, families and children were taken to safety. Nara spent the night walking through the camp. She helped fix armor, tied boots, and placed small stones at the feet of scared fighters. "This stone means you stand," she told a young boy. "You don't fall again." He nodded and held the stone tight. At dawn, the sky rumbled. The Empires. Ships flew over the canyon, blocking the sun. Dust swirled behind them as they landed far away. The sound was like thunder. Then silence. Nara stood on the ridge with Nira and Tomar. "They'll attack from 2 sides," Tomar said. "Let them," Nira replied. Nara raised her voice. "This is not just for us. This is for every soul still in chains. We stand today so they can rise tomorrow." Behind her, the fighters shouted in reply, "No fear, no surrender, together!" The battle began fast. Empire drones flew overhead, but they were hit by jammers and shot down. Troops marched in perfect lines, but the resistance used rocks and land to strike from shadows. Blasters fired, sand flew, smoke filled the air. Nara led her group through a hidden path and struck from behind. They took out a large gun, then pulled back before the Empire could strike. Tomar used a handheld controller to set off charges buried under the sand. A huge blast stopped the Empire's left flank. The ground shook. The enemy fell back. Nira's group held the front, moving carefully and firing with sharp aim. Hours passed. Fighters grew tired, but they didn't stop. In the middle of the fight, Nara saw a group of slavers trying to capture a young girl who had run from the caves. Nara rushed forward, dodged fire, and pulled the girl behind her. "You're safe," she said. The girl cried. "Are we losing?" Nara looked into her eyes. "Not today." Back at the command tent, Nira gave one final order. "Push forward." All units moved at once. The resistance attacked from all sides. The slavers were shocked. They had expected fear. They had found fire. Nara and Tomar fought side by side. They didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They moved like one. And then, it was over. The last enemy ship took off, flying away fast. The fighters didn't chase it. They didn't need to. The Empire had lost. Silence fell. Then, cheers. Loud, wild, full of life. The fighters hugged. Some wept, Some laughed. Some just looked at the sky in wonder. Nara stood in the middle of them, her arms open. The girl she had saved ran to her. Tamar placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "No," she replied. "We all did." Over the next few days, the outpost changed. It wasn't just a camp anymore. It became a center of hope. More people came, news reporters, traders, old soldiers, free people who wanted to join. The resistance was no longer a rumor. It was real. Mira announced a council would be formed. Nara was chosen to be part of it. She didn't speak much, but when she did, everyone listened. She helped guide plans to free other camps, build schools, and offer safety to the weak. Her story became legend. One evening, as the sun set and the stars came out, Nara and Tomar sat on a hill near the canyon. She looked at the place where she had once fallen. "Do you remember?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I thought I would die there," she said. "But you didn't," she smiled. "No, I lived, I rose, and now I stand." Tamar looked at her. "You're not the same person." "I am more," she said. The wind blew gently, and far across the desert, lights from other outposts began to shine one by one. The fire had grown, and it would never go out again.